Welcome to the Spoiler Alert podcast. And today is a very special day because it marks the season 3 premiere of the Spoiler Alert podcast. We've been doing this since the Christmas of 2020. So we're just very happy to be still doing this, even though, some of the videos have been coming in fewer and farther between, and we are planning on doing a better job of scheduling out our videos in the future so we can keep them going and keep them going consistently. And it makes a lot of sense that we were doing a lot more when there was, when we were still more quarantining. Speaking of that, today specifically, we will not have Dakota in this review, but fully expect everything to come back to normal here pretty quick. So we'll be doing videos again, just maybe a different schedule. So we'll keep you guys updated on all of that. Before we get started, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Spoiler Alert Podcast. Please, if you're able, donate to our Patreon, whatever you can. This is a labor of love, and the more funding we have to go towards it, the more we will do with it. We're looking on getting better equipment soon. But with that, today we're going to be reviewing Ikiru from 1952. Now, this is a film that's directed by Akira Kurosawa, who also directed Ran, if you remember that Father's Day episode from last year. Akira Kurosawa is one of my favorite all-time directors and really one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. He's really great at he's the first of a lot of things. He was like the first director to film the sun in an effective way. He was first to create the assembling a team type of movie. Maybe not the exact first, but probably the first to make the assemble a team kind of like action flick with Seven Samurai. And then his use of telephoto lenses, and when he went to his color era. And we're going to make a video about Akira Kurosawa at some point that's going to be a little more in depth, but just know this is a very, very, very intelligent director. His editing techniques we'll talk about in this film. Akira Kurosawa is one of the great masters of film. Ikiru stars Takashi Shimura. And Shimura is one of the actors that Akira Kurosawa brings back again and again in many of his films. Shimura was in Seven Samurai, and he was in Hidden Fortress, and among others. He has a very, very intense performance in this film, and you can tell that him and Toshiro Mifune from other Kurosawa films were both very, very well trained in acting for the silent films. The silent film era for Japan lasted a little longer than the silent film era in America. By the time the 40s came around and they got a lot more talkies, a lot of people were already trained in the art of silent film, which, you had to be Lon Chaney. You see a lot of that here. You see a lot of very, very exaggerated expressions. The film actually begins with an X-ray of a man's stomach, and a narrator explains that this man's stomach has cancer and he's going to die, and he only has a few months to live, and he doesn't know it yet. The man is named Kenji Watanabe, who's played by Shimura. And Kenji works in public affairs for this district, borough, whatever it may be, I believe in like the greater Tokyo area. You can tell that Kenji is beyond hope with his job. He's apathetic when it comes to asking people for help. He passes the buck onto other departments, and they do the same. And they'd be like, well, take it to water, take it to housing, take it to this and that and zoning and blah 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 blah. And no one actually ever gets anything done because just bureaucracy and politics and apathy and what people think is possible. The way they film that is a bunch of wipe cuts, which you'll see a lot in Star Wars and really were commonly used by Akira Kurosawa. And that's a pretty unique thing about his style. He uses a lot of wipe cuts, a lot of unique transitions. And the new problem that is brought forth to Kenji is that there's like this big cesspool in the middle of a neighborhood, where like garbage and waste and shit and anything you can imagine is just like built up in that little area, and they need to like get it drained or cleaned or repaired, or something needs to be done with it, and they keep passing it around. Now Kenji's in the hospital waiting room waiting for news of what's wrong with him and why his stomach hurts so bad and why he has, bad shits and this and that. And a fellow patient explains to him how bad stomach cancer can be, where your stool turns black, you're either heavily constipated or you have extreme diarrhea. Not fun stuff, but something that the patient also warned him about, that doctors will tell him that it's just an ulcer to keep his hopes up, but it'll eventually be cancer, and if it's cancer, he only has 6 months to live. That night, Kenji comes home to see Mitsu, who is his son. They live together. Mitsu can tell that something's wrong with Kenji, but Kenji's holding it back because he's very prideful, very private, that kind of thing. Doesn't want to, continues to just not want to rock the boat is one of the big themes here, not rocking the boat early on. That night he has flashbacks of Mitsu, and Mitsu during the course of the film seems ungrateful and seems this and that, but overall comes around. Very big source of pride for Kenji. He has like flashbacks of him playing baseball. He has flashbacks of him just as a little kid. And then Kenji walks into a tavern of some type where a writer is drinking and talking to the bartender. And they kind of hit it off right away just as friends. And the much younger writer kind of likes Kenji because he explains about his sickness, and he explains about his like feelings about his son not liking him and pushing him away. Keep in mind that the writer here is very drunk already, but very fun, lighthearted, and wants to take Kenji out for a night on the town, and they do just that. They go to a piano bar and he sings a song that's very sad, and he would sing later in the film about basically enjoying life while you have it, and doing the best with life while you have it. During this night on the town, they go to like these clubs, see some strippers. They bring girls back in their car. Kenji needs a moment to himself to, I believe, vomit. It's reminded by all of them that he is dying, so he doesn't have like all the vigor to, I think, make the most of that night, if I recall. And then the next morning, Kenji has a pretty bad hangover, and he sees a former employee of his, former female employee of his. So they get coffee, they go skating, they go to a fair, they watch a movie. Kind of has like a really big day of it. And then she convinces him to reconnect with his son too, which is nice because she's interested in like his change of perspective, because he always seemed like such a grouch, but now he's kind of opened up to the world a little more right at the very end. And Mitsu, still not knowing Kenji's diagnosis or anything, snaps at him before he can tell him that he's sick. And a lot of it was like about like inheritance and stuff like that too, so it came off as extra rude and hurtful. And the female former employee that he's been seeing a little bit these last few days is named Toyo. Toyo eventually agrees to dinner with Kenji. And that's when Kenji tells her about his cancer. She makes toy bunnies for a living, and because of that, like, she can still find meaning in that because she knows that it makes like little kids happy. So even though it's like laborious and just one thing and soul draining, really, like she can still make the best of it. And he's inspired by that and grabs hold of one of the toy rabbits and skitters off away from her and with a new motive. It cuts to 5 months later, and this is the big transition point in the film. A totally different POV swap entirely at this point in the film, and the press is basically buzzing around a new park that Kenji had made and what turns out to be that old cesspool location. They're at this wake, and at this wake there's like really corporate higher ups and mayors and this and that are there, and then there's like more ground level local political employees that he had worked with, but the corporate people are really douchey, specifically the mayor. He kind of belittled Kenji's accomplishments in getting the playground built because he claims that it was, just a part of his duty the whole time. And any good director of public affairs would do the same. Here, he exceeded expectations and exceeded really anyone's ambitions for getting anything done in public affairs. So a lot of the people that were on the ground level stuck around a little longer at the wake than the corporate people. The corporate people left. The other ones kind of stuck around and started drinking and hanging out a little more. A lot of them weren't sure if Kenji knew he was sick, because they figured if he knew he was sick, why would he be doing that much? Because he was doing a lot for an older director. And then they start to piece together all the work that he did and any of the signs of him being sick that he had. So that pieces it together for the audience with flashbacks of him negotiating with this person, or him negotiating with the mayor, or him almost getting like beat up, almost getting attacked by the mob because they wanted to make a red light district, and spit in the face of that, and doing a lot of good is what they like explain the whole backstory of. One of these people at the wake that did notice it and was more profoundly affected by Kenji earlier on was one that Kenji had told that he might not have much time, just in passing. Like Kenji wasn't trying to like open up to him, but he said, we must hurry, like we don't have much, I don't have much time. And then he just thought of that, and then he noticed him having like trips to the bathroom and stuff like that was unusual, that just made the job harder and made him respect him a hell of a lot more. To kind of clear everything up about his death too, a policeman shows up and speaks of Kenji's last moments. This policeman was really devastated about Kenji's death. He paid his respects and he explained the story. And the story is that Kenji was sitting on a swing and singing that same song that he had sung earlier in the movie when he was out partying. It's about, enjoying life while you have it and doing the most with it that you can, and doing it with people you love. And the policeman at the time had just thought that Kenji was some drunk that, was going to be fine and was just messing around on the swing. But it turned out that Kenji died on that swing and collapsed, and that's when the policeman found him. But he was happy and he was singing and he was alive in that moment. And the song, like we said, is like about all these things, but specifically about how brief life is and can be. Back at the wake, when they hear that kind of cements it for them that he knew what was happening to him, and he did all that work for, this small victory of like something good in the world that he left behind. And everyone at the wake vows to change the way they work. So they vow to all like live by his example and do the most they can all the time. But we wipe to the next day and it's the same old. It's, passing the buck. The employee that like was the most connected to Kenji during the whole process and had the earliest suspicions of his illness, stood up and was, just with his eyes ridiculing and questioning the new director, because the new director is passing things off like they used to. Really, they just kind of go back to that apathetic cycle, and then that employee walks home along the bridge that is directly over the playground that Kenji had built and had left behind, and that's the end of the film. So, as far as place in society goes, this is one of, it's a Kurosawa film, so Coppola was inspired by it. Spielberg was, Scorsese was. This is among their favorite films of Kurosawa. Yeah, it's very good. The reason we're going to be releasing it around Christmas here is that to me it's kind of like the foreign language version of It's a Wonderful Life. I think they're very similar in their own ways. I like Ikiru a little more, but they're kind of both mirrors of each other in some way, and both very effective and hold up very well. I really like Akira Kurosawa, so if I were to make any recommendations, it would be Seven Samurai. It would be Ran. Check out a Ran video. It would be Hidden Fortress. It'd be Yojimbo and Sanjuro, Kagemusha. Like, you really can't go wrong with any Akira Kurosawa. And then my rating of this film is going to be out of 5 stars, 5 stars. I think this is one of those films that's just going to last forever. It's very universal and humanistic, and those kind of things last. So that's about all the time we have for today, guys. Please check out our Instagram, Twitter, Patreon. Tell your friends about us. Pass us along. We're going to be changing up the structure a little bit. It might be a little more seasonal, where we have a grouping of one type of video for a number of months, and then a grouping of another type, to try to get a more sustainable pattern going. We're going to keep you guys updated the best we can with that. On that note, have a great day, everybody. Thank you for listening and watching the Spoiler Alert podcast.